Good afternoon, everybody. No One Fucking Cares podcast, episode 9, with a legendary guest, to say the least, Mr. Seamus Lyons, who was a former New York State trooper, and he worked with, I guess, 4 separate police departments: Rockland County Sheriff's, Village of Piermont, and NYPD, and then with us for 13 years, and then he's currently with the Rockland County Sheriff's Office. Seamus is a classmate of mine, meaning we went to the academy together. I know a little bit about Seamus. It's funny that Seamus and I went down to 9/11 together, and we were just reminiscing on a few particular events when we were down there. And those times, usually it's the most hectic times, is which the times you remember more vividly. And then more recently, right before I retired down in Rockland, I had the opportunity to catch up with Seamus on a few different occasions, ran my dog in a few cars where he was there, and we had some good times. And if there's anything you can say about Seamus Lyons, from my perspective, is that he was not, and still to this day, at 56 years of age, is still not a slug. He is not a slug. I know that's something that he hates, is the slugs. And I want to get into that at some point, the definition of a slug. But Carm, go ahead and tell your introduction of Seamus, if you will.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. Episode number 9 of the NOFC podcast. This one's called Thruway Trooper Scandal and Redemption. Jay did his introduction. My introduction is this. When I was a younger trooper, I remember, and I think a lot of cops from different agencies kind of know this about Seamus, he was an absolute hammer on the road. If you've seen his book, which we'll get into in a little bit, he is known to come back with some of the biggest arrests down in Zone 2 in the Rockland County area and in Westchester County areas that are, his arrests have been formidable. Major amounts of drugs, really, really bad people, and he has done some amazing work. What we'll get into will be controversial. We're going to discuss kind of at length his life, his history, the stuff that he went through at the state police. But I know him to be a legend because we had heard stories, tales of Seamus, as they would say back in the day, of the grabs that he would get and the major drugs he would take in. I got to know him later in my career when I became the senior investigator for the Haverstraw State Police Barracks, because Seamus now works for the Rockland County Sheriff's Office and Rockland County Intel, right, Seamus? Rockland County Intel.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
So I got to know him in working some of our cold case homicides and an active homicide down there where we utilized Rockland County Intel and the amazing people who work there that do amazing intel work to back up the homicide cases. So we're going to give a brief legal disclaimer too on this one because it's kind of a contentious topic and because he wrote a book about what he went through. We have to say, and it's not going to be something I'm going to read from a page. It's just going to say these views that Seamus gives are those of Seamus alone. While we might agree with certain things here and there, we can't really play sides in this one, and we have to be neutral and impartial and how we present the information and how we allow Seamus to tell his story. These are the views of Seamus. They're not the views of us necessarily. We agree with certain things, not other things. But we just wanted to make that clear that while we support his freedom of speech and the fact for him to go forward and tell the story of what happened to him, we're not going to take sides. We're going to be impartial in this one and let him tell his story. We're also going to say that we're going to refer to the people in his book by initials or nicknames only. We're not going to reveal their real identities for the sake of their protection. If you want this information, if you want to find out more about what Seamus went through, you could read his book. It's called Thruway Trooper, which we'll get into, and we'll have Seamus explain a little bit. So, which Jay is showing on the screen right now. If you want all the specific information, we encourage you to buy the book and to judge it for yourself and to tell him what you think and help him in his cause. So, Seamus, if you would, tell us about yourself. Tell us about your experience and your history.
All right. Well, good afternoon, both of you, Jay and Carmen. Thank you very much for having me. I really do appreciate it. I do appreciate all the accolades you've given me, too. It is a joint effort with the people that I did work with on the state police. So be it I was out there alone on a lot of car stops, I did have a lot of men and women backing me up there with the state police. So I just want to make that clear. Jay told you I'm 56 years old now. I come from a long family of police background, be it my father, a retired member of the NYPD, my brother, who, like me, bounced around a lot. He was hired out in Florida, but decided to come back, was a police officer in Mount Vernon, went to a smaller PD up here, Nyack. Nyack disbanded. He went to Orangetown, retired. He's now working in the private sector. At a young age, it was in the blood. I mean, I remember being in high school and, everybody going away to college and being like, all right, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? I did get a great job after high school working for the Thruway Authority. I spent 5 years with them. And then it just happened. I took the test. At the time when I was taking the test, it was like every department was hiring back then. It was good to be police. I got a lot of job offers. One of the job offers was with the Rockland County Sheriff's. I did take that position. I did go through the academy. Upon graduation from the Rockland Academy, I was offered a job at the Piermont Police Department. The chief there was very friendly, a very good friend of mine. I did take that job. The thing was, I was at a young age. It was a small department, as you guys are aware. There wasn't room for me for advancement there. I did my DWIs, my traffic stops, but it was a 1 mile town with a small business district. I was looking for bigger and better things. I left. I went to the NYPD. I loved it. I graduated. I went to a housing project, worked in PSA 7. Then I ended up in the confines of the 4-6 precinct, where I really learned the job. I got into a drug tracer unit, which was it was my forte. I loved it. I just loved, going hands-on, getting these bad people off the street. As opportunity came, state police came calling. I figured, hey, let me give it a shot. No regrets. October of 2000, I entered the State Police Academy with Jay. Like I said, no regrets. I loved it. Upon graduation, I was going to be going over to Westchester County. It appeared my FTO got activated in the military. They were shorthanded, so I ended up in B Troop. Again, this was when they went to the 12 hours, so I had no regrets there either. I was like, all right, 12 hours, I can come home on the weekends. My senior man was fantastic, who was still on the job up in B Troop. And I worked my way back home, all the way back to Monroe. Got from Monroe to Palisades. From Palisades, I went to the T-Way. And that's where the interdiction began to really come into play.
So how long were you, did you do your first stint up in Troop B there when you were released from the academy?
I was up there for the duration for about 4.5 months. There were some people ahead of me that had family issues that wanted to get back home. It was okay with me to stay up there. I had a good group with me at the time. And like I said, the 12 hours was the pilot program. So, our long weekends were Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, come home, short week, swing back, and then I'd go back to Beach, or I'd drive back. It wasn't a bad drive. So I was up there for 4.5 months and then worked my way back home.
Very quickly.
So go ahead, Carl.
I just want to ask about NYPD. Tell us a little bit, just because I think we're buffs about that too. I think I mentioned in my earlier podcast, my favorite cousin in the world, Rich Trimble, retired as a sergeant from the NYPD, and I love stories from city police work, and I have family that still works down there. So tell us a little bit about the 4-6 in 2 minutes or less, if you would.
4-6 was a busy house. I'll put it this way. When I got there, my head was spinning. You want to learn the job. You want to go to a busy command. This command was busy to the point where you're going in for a midnight tour of 4 to 12. You're standing on the steps and they're holding jobs, calling on the radio, holding jobs. The car would pull up, the RMP, it's still running. You're jumping in it, going job to job. 8 hours went by in the blink of an eye. One of the things with Model Block was when I got there in the 4-6, we had this new initiative called Model Block. So 181, 182 and Creston Avenue was a mandatory foot post. So for a new guy like me and the graduates coming on, obviously this is where you're going to be dumped. One of the things we were told is, try and stay out of trouble. Just walk the footpost. Try not to get involved in anything. You guys know
Famous
me.
last words.
You guys know me. I'll never forget my first arrest. It was raining. You got the burnt out car sitting there, and there was a gentleman passed out in the car. I took him for auto stripping, and when I got back, the lieutenant looked at me. He goes, "Are you out of your mind?" I go, "No, sir." I go, and turns out the guy was wanted. It worked out to be a good arrest, but learning the paperwork down in NYPD took a while. After that, I spent about a month on model block. There was an opening in patrol. I took that opening. It was days and 4 to 12. I got to work with a busy cop who got promoted shortly thereafter and became a detective. Once he got promoted, I was kind of bounced around, riding with people, filling in where the ticket summons man needed a guy in the car. So there was an opening in Tracer, and Tracer was involved with a handful of uniform cops, a handful of plainclothes anti-crime cops, and it was Monday, steady Sunday, Monday off. I put in for it. I ended up getting the position, fell in love with it, and all we did was street level narcotics, grabbing, street dealers. That's where I really fell in love with narcotics work and doing interdiction. And after that, even when I was, I saw everybody leaving the NYPD for other jobs. My female partner left and went to Yonkers PD. My second partner left and also went to Yonkers. My third partner in Tracer left and went to the Connecticut State Police. He just recently retired. So I made the decision. State Police came calling. I said, all right, maybe I could take this a step further, bigger roads. So I left. I went to the State Police. No regrets.
Carm, by the way, that's a you 2 minutes or less, by the way, which is fine.
Well, we wanted him to explain.
No, I find it, Seamus, that's a joke, but I find it extremely fascinating.
Yeah.
So, all right, so you start getting into interdiction, and I think before Carm circled you back around to your NYPD time, you were catching up to speed on the T-Way, and once you hit the T-Way, that's where everything kind of came full circle in regards to your interdiction. Is that accurate?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, absolutely. But don't get me wrong. In B Troop, I learned, the workings of the State Police, our accidents, our fatals, our DWIs. My senior man was fantastic. I mean, I can't say enough about him. He's still on the job up there in B Troop, and he's a boss. He's good. He's in the book. Once I got to Troop F and worked my way back to Monroe, where both of you guys are familiar with that barracks, the seniority thing, it really didn't play a part. It was more of, when we got to Monroe, it was more of, hey, you're taking the complaints, which is understandable, but stay off the highway. Stay off 17.
That's a big thing, yeah.
So
we know how that works out.
I wouldn't say I disregarded that, but there were times where, hey, listen, there's no other way to get there quickly or to get onto 17. I did run into a few car stops. I did make a few good arrests. After that, when I came down to Palisades, SP Haverstraw, the Palisades is a great road. Some really good arrests, some really good troopers when I got there. A handful of them, they greeted me, welcomed me with open arms, and they taught me a lot. And it was there where these other troopers who I had the opportunity to work with had a keen eye for interdiction. It was one of the things that bothers me is drug interdiction and criminal interdiction. It's the evil to all. These drug dealers, the fentanyl, the heroin, the cocaine, the marijuana, all of it, the gateway drugs. We were making great arrests. One of the things
I'm just going to stop you very quick because I want you, while we're talking about it, I want you to clarify for the viewer, for the people who may be watching this who don't understand what that means. Explain interdiction, vehicle and traffic interdiction.
And not only, hold on, not only that, Seamus, but you don't have to give a specific case. But I think for those that haven't read your book, this can be one time where I'm going to tell you, it's go ahead and pat yourself on the back and give some examples of some shit that you actually brought in, because it's nothing to be ashamed of. It's some fucking crazy shit sure.
And tie that into interdiction, the concept, so people understand what it means.
Criminal interdiction, it's looking beyond the ticket. Don't go out there and look just for your headlight or your seatbelt and go, here's your ticket, be on your way. No, that's not how it works.
Exactly.
I know division had its own set of rules and the DWIs and all of that. Granted, yeah, okay, I did. I took my DWIs. I did the V&T the best I could. For the interdiction part, I looked beyond every summons, every ticket, every car I stopped, everybody, interviewed everybody in that car. I wanted to know who, where, why, what, and when, what this traffic stop was going to lead to. I didn't care if it was 4 a.m, 3 a.m, 3 p.m. Interdiction is 24 hours a day, and it's out there. The Palisades Parkway was a great road. Again, Troop F. I love Troop F. I would have probably stayed in Troop F. But as supervision would have it, I was instructed, along with other members, to stay off certain roads, to not make arrests. That left a sour taste in my mouth, and I ended up putting him for a transfer, along with many other troopers who left.
Well, while you were in Troop F, tell us an example or two, a very overall, like what amounts of things that you got out of cars, handguns, drugs.
Well, one of my first arrests out there, with my partner who I worked with for years, and is also a classmate of ours, and is fine with his name being stated anyway. William Sahusky was my partner. Once we got cut loose out there, my first arrest was a loaded handgun and some heroin. It was there where, it's an adrenaline rush. You get these people off the street, and you look more into the investigative steps of it after you make the arrest. You bring it back, you do a deep dive into it. This case, he stole this gun from a retired NYPD member. So you could imagine how happy he was to get his weapon back. Things like that. I mean, the Parkway was a great road. My second large arrest on the Palisades Parkway would have been 56 pounds of marijuana concealed in a delivery van. A lot of handguns, grabbed a lot of handguns. Like I said, we had a great station at this point. It saddens me, but people left and they bettered their career, left for smaller departments or better departments. But I trained with the best and I learned from the best. Like I said, I would have loved to stay in Troop F. Do I have any regrets for that? No, none. Shortly thereafter, once I transferred out to the T-Way, my criminal interdiction really, really became alive. And when I say became alive, this highway, this throughway from the city limits to the Northway, to the Quickway, to get to 17, these drugs are all in transport, and it's out there. And, I know members that were, oh, it's so easy to do. Jay, being a canine handler, can tell you, it's not that easy. You got to have a keen eye. You got to know what to look for. You got to know how to interview people. Legally, how to get into a car. Don't create case law. Do not create case law. You're going to make our job harder. One of the benefits I had for the state police was a camera car. I had a cage car in SP Haverstraw. It was a camera car. Once I got to the T-Way, 1T19 was my car. It was cage. Nobody wanted to drive that car. It was a video-equipped car. And these video cameras, all they did was benefit us. They benefited us. We go to court, you play those tapes, and it's there. What is the defense attorney going to do? What's going to be your argument? It cuts down on PCs, on complaints. So it was I'm a big advocate for the video-equipped cars.
To interrupt you quickly.
Sure.
We had covered this somewhat in an earlier episode about body-worn cameras, and I explained at one point that I shared a car with another functioning trooper up in the Troop F Zone 3 area. Name rhymes with Hastings, if anybody remembers that name. And I shared that car with him, and we both had the camera car. And I will say exactly what you said. It protected me more times than not, because I always tried to do everything on above board and to make sure that things were done legally. But the grabs that I got, and I wasn't nearly as aggressive as you with it, but I came with really good grabs in that car too, and it always helped me out in court, and also helped me with personnel complaints too. So totally agree with you there. Keep going.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
no, I'm sorry. Hold on 1 second. So Seamus brought up a good point also, is that the key thing that he said when doing interdiction, what I also was not that great at, is not creating case law and doing it the right way.
Yeah.
The few opportunities I did have to work with Seamus, you can tell he is an artist. It's the best way I can put it. He's an artist, because there's a lot of people that are the wannabes who they'll go out and they'll try to be the interdictors, but you cringe when you hear how they talk to people and how they get into cars. And it's not the way, not only do you not want to be a part of that, but it's not how we should be representative, and it's not legal. So the Thruway, which you were on, was called the Main Line, right? At the time, Main Line.
That's correct. Mainline.
And so go ahead, go back into your story there.
So the Thruway again, and once I got to Tarrytown, it's a very diverse station. It was a good station. The captain expected tickets, DWIs, and for some people, this was the fast track for BCI, tickets and DWIs. At this point in my career, I love the road. I love the road. I love the road. I got to work with, like I said, I'm going to say it over and over again, some canine handlers that were fantastic. Jimmy Leader came back from BCI. He got the dog. We were crushing it out there. Kevin Hoverman, Troop K, fantastic. His dog was fantastic. You want to talk about significant arrest? That's where it happened. The I-95 corridor, the New York State Thruway. I can't, day or night, we were out there. We were either writing tickets, doing high profile stops, high volume stops, no matter where we were. We were spread out. One guy would be working I-95, one guy I-87, one guy 287, one guy outside of Yonkers. We always had a team out there doing interdiction. We called it criminal interdiction. It just wasn't narcotics. You're out there looking for everything. You're looking for wanted people, guns, drugs, etc. One of the things that always held me back is I wasn't a big ticket writer. In my book, you'll see, if you read my POFs, my performance evaluation from the supervisors, every one of them would always apologize when they brought me in for low V&T activity. Listen, part of the game, par for the course. I signed them all. And, you're going to say, hey, the guy never wrote tickets or drunks, but, on the same page, we're dragging in bodies. I think division looked at it more of like, oh, God, here comes the overtime again. This guy's going to be tied up in court. He's tied up with patrol. A lot of our arrests, as you guys know, I mean, people watching this are going to be like, well, just have somebody else take over the post or do whatever. That's not how it works on the main line. It's not how it works in Troop F. You're stuck with an arrest. That arrest is yours. You're calling in people on overtime. I get it. I drove some of the bosses and sergeants crazy, and lieutenants. Do I regret any of it? No. It was in my blood. The V&T stuff, it's important. It is. But in the same sense, you have guys that are doing your V&T. It balances itself out, I believe. We made Troop T look fantastic. It was a well-oiled machine, and you guys are aware we led the state in narcotics arrest. We crushed it. So
you crushed it. You crushed it, and it was done legally, which was to your benefit and to your accolades. You did everything above board. Yeah,
absolutely.
Well, going back to, it's interesting, the parallel of how somebody who's doing a set skill that is not many people can do. And where, not to make this about me, but when I did K9, that was, I tried my whole career to find something that I actually could dive into and get that satisfaction out of. And canine was it. I was trying to perfect the art of reading the dog and being able to have the most well-versed dog that I could. I wasn't there yet, but that's what I was trying to do. And for my Seamus story, when I was in Monroe, I will call it Paulie C, who he has a history of his own, but I would literally, me and Paulie C I would mirror him. We would pull over cars. He was very good at talking to people. If we got into the car, the dog would be run, and we were pulling in a decent amount of stuff. So I took my pride because I wasn't the best communicator. Shame on me. Maybe I should, but I found pride in watching my dog work and perfecting that art. And it was the same song and dance. So I can attest to that portion of Seamus's career, and where you would be pulled into the office. And this is where my little reference of Mr. Calzone comes in, rhymes with. Where he would pull you in, not even make eye contact with you, and reference your activity. Meanwhile, not being aware of the fact that you're doing stuff. It's just not what Seamus says. You're not writing your tickets because that's not what this job's about. Again, yes, you do have to, but what are you doing? What does your day consist of? If you're out there working, trying, then like your supervisors should acknowledge that and at least be able to give you credit for what you're doing.
But you're also talking about apples and oranges when it comes to assignments. Troop FSB Monroe, Troop FSB Catskill are busy complaint stations where you're running from a domestic to a fatal to a burglary to a grand larceny to whatever else. And then so to balance the time of what you guys did, getting out on the road, kind of defying the order for Seamus to get back to his thing about staying off the highways, to get good interdiction stuff off of 17, which was basically a drug and arrest cow, essentially. You had to balance that with working in a very, very busy station, which is similar to other stations, whereas Haverstraw was more of a highway station where you had the Palisades and the Thruway running through it, and it would predominantly, most of the arrests that came out of there were vehicle and traffic arrests or interdiction arrests, which is where Seamus comes into the story. So just to explain to the viewer the contrast of busy stations versus a highway station where they want you to go out and write a high amount of tickets every day. They want you to go out and be active and take wanted, dangerous criminals off the road in doing so. So just to provide some context, but Jay, your story about canine assists, it kind of leads into what Seamus was talking about with the big highway grabs and when they turn into bureau cases. And Seamus, when you're done, I'm going to tell you a little bit of a frustration that I have with you guys. That,
sure.
Do you want me to say this now?
No, why not? Absolutely. You have valid points with the complaint stations, and I agree with you totally on that, 100%. You're working out of SP Monroe. I mean, you're bouncing complaint and complaint. I get that, and the senior guys are the ones sitting on the highways. Some may be active, some may just do nothing. Yeah,
very true. It's and then so to fast forward to what I'm going to say to Seamus, which might piss him off a little bit, but I'm willing to risk that, is when I became the senior at SB Haverstraw, the senior investigator, you're in charge of the investigators and in charge of, in certain spots, the way troopers perform their function in arrests and coordination of felony complaints, etc. The Thruway and the Palisades that go through are literally just busy highways full of drugs, full of guns, full of people who are wanted for crimes that they've committed either in this state or out of the state. The troopers bring in big arrests. The investigators take over the cases. And then people who do big interdiction cases typically don't stick around for the after effects of all of the paperwork and the warrants that will come of the arrest, and especially now because of the Bail Elimination Act. But even back then, judges had discretion to let offenders go after arraignment, after they were clipped for a kilo of cocaine or a handgun or whatever. And the warrants that come in after you guys do your magic, which I love, and you should be doing it because you remove a lot of very dangerous recidivist criminals off the road. The frustration for the Bureau, to tell you the other side of it, is when I got to Haverstraw, the number of warrants in that warrant drawer that had the name Seamus fucking Lyons attached to it, I would be cursing you out because we would have we'd have however many warrants, which I won't even get into specifics because I don't want to release operational specifics of a station. But the warrants that had your name on it, I was like, fucking Seamus, because it'd be a warrant for, weed, which is now legal in certain spots. We have a bench warrant that I would have to try to get the judge to rescind the warrant because it's now legal. And just kind of a funny aside that I would be motherfucking you, but then call you like, hey, because now you work for Rockland Intel. I'm like, but I love this guy, so I can't really be mad at him because he helps me all the fucking time with stuff for these homicides that we have going on. So I hated you and I loved you at the same time when I worked down there. So just so you know.
I understand. Listen, it's frustrating in a way, and I get it, and I would say to myself, we would do arraignments, and I would always want a high cash bail. Due to that being eliminated, a lot of warrants. When I had an arrest, if it went to an outside troop, I did my very best to document everything. I would get this guy or girl's background to say, hey, listen, you're going to turn into a warrant. I'm going to find you. You're coming back. No matter how far you went, a lot of our arrests outside of Albany, or Buffalo, Utica, Amsterdam, are they going to be coming back to Rockland County for a court appearance? I doubt it. So I would do my best. A lot of people, again, I can use their names because they've given me permission. Great investigators, Mike DeWitt, Brendan Tumulty. I would do my very best from A to Z to say, hey, this is what I got. You get to the station. I've taken statements. I've done it all. Yeah, we got to handle
your balls, bro. You know that.
No, I get it, but you're right. I mean, the warrant draws. I mean, I can imagine what it was like. I would get notifications that, hey, I keep a black book of everybody that I ever arrested or put in state prison. And, every once in a while I'd go back and I have it on my desk at Intel and I'd look through and be like, well, I wonder where this guy is. And I'd run him or run her. Wanted. It's like, oh. Yeah. So I feel your frustration and I agree with you.
Yeah. And we also discussed previous how our, specifically the state police, how our warrant system works is antiquated at best,
right.
And needs to be better developed. So, there's no hiding that side of the story. Exactly. I don't care who you are. It just sucks.
Right.
It's absolutely,
you open up the warrant drawer, fill out the warrant sheet, no new leads. Okay.
Exactly.
Yep. So to stick with my script that I sent you guys, which I along that framework, because we got to kind of keep us on track. Jay, are you good with me moving forward? You have anything else?
Yep. No, you're good. Go
ahead. So we kind of get into the hard topic here. Tell us about your book, and tell us how this turned into what it turned in for you as a trooper.
All right. Well, the book itself was more of therapy for me to keep me from losing my mind. During all the court appearances, I had a yellow notepad where I would I'd write some stuff down, or I'd go back to transcripts and listen to them and say, this is insanity. But this all started back, in 2009. It involved some missing evidence, which turned up 18 months after the fact. The evidence in play was, unfortunately, from an arrest that I had made. When they came to us, it was an evidence custodian. She worked in Troop K. She was the evidence custodian. She ended up calling Tarrytown to ask two investigators where the evidence was. In return to that phone call, the investigator said, "Are you kidding me? 18 months? It's either in your evidence vault, or it's destroyed, or the case is pending, or there's no final disposition on that case." What happened was this led to other pieces of evidence that went missing. We were all brought in for statements. I'm going to go back to that 18 months asking, did we ever have any contact with the evidence? Yeah, I drove the investigator that day to drop off evidence to an unrelated case up in Newburgh, where the lieutenant at the lab said, "Hey, you guys going back to Tarrytown?" We took evidence back to SP Hawthorne. That evidence was then placed back into the evidence vault in Hawthorne. And 18 months later, this evidence either walked out or disappeared. One senior investigator that was in charge of Troop K. All eyes were focused on him. He was there that day. My first statement I gave along with the other troopers and investigators. In statement number 2, I gave another statement. No, nothing new. It was the same exact course of what transpired that day. And my third statement, I did some homework. I started to do a deep dive into SJS. I got the blotter back from SP Tarrytown, trying to refresh my memory. Like, what, that day was it was a regular day. I drove an investigator, drove him back, went out back on the road, did car stops, searched a few cars, made a bullshit UPM arrest. It was then I found in SJS a report, and in that report, there was a case of mine for a military ring that was located during a search of a car where we actually pulled out a gun and some drugs, and we returned the military ring to the West Point cadet, and it turned out that was left out of the statement because we did an interview in Middletown that day. When I brought that to light to certain individuals in the Internal Affairs Bureau, we were told, well, how'd you find that? I said, I did a little digging into SJS. They wanted memos from both myself, the investigators in Tarrytown, and 2 other troopers. Those memos never came to light. They brought us all back into statements to give statements again. I told them what had transpired. A certain individual, we'll just refer to him as Mr. Smith. He asked me, why would I do something like that? Why would I go deep diving into SJS? Or you're not part of an internal, you're part of this investigation. What are you looking for? I said, I was looking for the truth, and I found it. I go, this is why there's a delay in our timestamp travel for that day. He wasn't happy with that answer, but it all evened itself out and made sense. Shortly thereafter, that third statement, I was subpoenaed to testify in a hearing in the Bronx, and it was for a certain investigator who felt he was mistreated. I did go to the court. I did take the stand and testify for over an hour. Shortly thereafter that, 5 days later, I was served with charges for candor in my statement, for providing a statement.
Seamus, when you did your deep dive into SJS, which is our computer, basically our computer backbone for all of our cases, just so people don't know, SJS is our computer backbone where you can reference any case from any part of the state. So when you did that and you found, okay, we got this ring back to a cadet, did Division ever interview her to confirm that story or no?
There was a certain individual, I'll just refer to him as Flocka Clueless. He stated he did an interview on her. One of the things that we found out later is his interview was a sham, and he was very hostile towards her. And his report indicated that she may have been under the influence of narcotics. Blah blah blah. Not the best investigator, not the best boss. Actually, was one of my counselors in the academy. One of the things that they asked me was that, hey, now that he found that in SJS, they asked me, could I have altered the timestamp on that report? We both know I couldn't do that. That report with that documentation actually, I think, saved us. Wasn't trying to hide anything, and it was documented in our reporting system. It wouldn't be till later in federal court where all of this would come to play.
Okay. Interesting. Do you, along the lines of where they kind of drove this investigation, do you feel as though the original target of the investigation kind of became a sideline effort in the whole thing? Or how do you feel as though their investigation was targeted?
Well, as for being targeted, let's just talk factual. You have somebody that's in charge of the evidence vault. You have a senior investigator who's in charge of this vault. Once the cocaine, the marijuana, and the dagger went missing in my case, Another trooper out of Tarrytown was in the locker room. We're changing tour change. He says, "Oh yeah," he goes, "Yeah, I'm missing a bunch of 86 oxycodone pills." I go, "From where?" And he goes, "Oh, the evidence vault in Troop K." And, and again, I'm not going to start, bad mouthing Troop K. The investigators, there were some really good people and investigators and troopers there. But yeah, you focus on where the facts take you. And this senior investigator, he's your point of contact. He is your primary suspect.
In this investigation.
In this investigation.
Yeah.
It wasn't until later on, again, I'm going to bring it back to the federal court system because I couldn't get anywhere on the state level. After being served with charges, it was brought to my attention that, hey, everything came to light. Once the attorneys got involved in the federal system, I was provided documents, and then as these documents were flooding in, I would go through them, which included everybody's statement. So here you have me being charged for candor in my statement, where you had other investigators that day forgot about doing an interview and forgot about stopping to grab apple pie for lunch the same day that the evidence went missing. It wasn't candor for them. It was an oversight. It was an oversight for them, but it wasn't for me. I think they focused on Troop T. Once the governor's office got involved, I think our former governor got involved once he had legal counsel get involved. They took over this investigation. I mean, who does that? Legal counsel? You're going to have Albany legal counsel do the investigation? It wasn't until I got everybody's statement where I saw the senior's statement, and it turns out there was a lot more to this whole investigation that I didn't know at the time.
Just to clarify, you're talking about the senior investigator who is the original intended target of this investigation, for which you kind of were caught up in, correct? Just to provide context.
That's correct. That's correct.
Number one, and number two. So this is the important part of this too, just to provide some background too. This is what you're talking about is all public record at this point, right?
This is true.
And it's also spelled out in a book that's been published by you, where it's gone to the court of public opinion in certain respects too. Is that correct?
That is correct.
All right. So third, I just want to ask this too. What you're saying is that it was an oversight on your part that you stopped at this place to get apple pie. And I got to ask the hard question, because the viewers are going to ask like why we didn't ask it. Is that truthful? Is everything you're saying 100% truthful about the means and motive and opportunity of how you came to be kind of the secondary target in this whole thing? Are you telling the truth about this?
Absolutely, 100%.
Okay.
And then further, Seamus, which is, I think, after reading your book and not being aware of the intimate details, this original target, the senior investigator that was evidence custodian, he did something during this investigation. What did he do?
Well, at first he wasn't cooperating with the investigation.
Yep.
A lot of things were not in play. He stated that he wasn't there that day. I clearly remember seeing him in Hawthorne that morning, as did the investigator who I drove to Hawthorne. Never said he was working. I said I saw him there. He was there. It was very, as we all are aware, yeah, you'll see people at the barracks that aren't working that day or stopping in. One of the things that came out later when I was reading his statement, I was very disappointed, where it appears they have him on the ropes. They had him. He was going for it. And they took a break. Without going into, who took his statement, they didn't come back to the record for an hour and 46 minutes later, where this senior investigator read a preamble. And at that point, he decided to retire from the New York State Police. One of the things that he wanted in lieu of retirement was not to have his wife at the time arrested or charged. I knew nothing about that. it was a Troop F case. It wasn't until later on where, you do a deep dive and you find out, oh, somebody was arrested for forging prescriptions for oxycodone, the same pills that went missing out of the evidence vault. Again, he was never charged by the state police for that, but for me, yeah, candor in my statement. It wasn't an oversight. It was complete candor. So you could see my frustrations there, and then at this point, I'm still out there working, and it wasn't until I keep referring back to federal court where, the gloves come off. At what point, is the state police going to admit that, hey, listen, we're barking up the wrong tree? It wasn't until we got them on the stand where you can read the testimony. You could go on Pacer and read the transcripts and say, hey, somebody's lying here. And it wasn't me and it wasn't the investigator. So, at that point in my career, I'm given a letter to sign to either resign or be terminated.
And tell us a little bit about that. Tell us about the letter that you mentioned in the book that apparently didn't show up later. Provide some context for the viewers, if you would.
Sure. This letter. So back to this case, I'm served with charges. And as we all know, when you're served with charges, they'll either come down with some offer, a plea offer, or say, hey, listen, you fucked up. We're going to give you a swap, suspension without pay for 10, 15, 30 days, 60 days. Nothing came my way. I was ordered to a hearing. When I say ordered to the hearing, as you guys are well aware of, it's a kangaroo court. You got 3 commissioned officers. I get to pick one. Again, this was 12 hours. It was unbelievable. I remember having to drive up to Albany, getting in the troop car at a Tarrytown, driving to Albany. It was a 12-hour hearing. Didn't get out of there till after 7 o'clock at night. Drove back, waited, and approximately 14 days later, the superintendent, they came down with an offer. It went from 60 to 30 to a swap and 6 months probation, to where the superintendent overturned it and said that it's going to be either resign or be terminated.
He overturned what? Explain that further, what that means.
Their offer?
The superintendent overturned the offer, and for the first time in his career, decided that he was going to overturn their decision. So that the court, the 12-hour session in court meant nothing. He decided it was either resign or be terminated.
And you're inferring that that decision and process was influenced by the governor's office, correct?
Oh, 100%. I mean, after I testified in an HR complaint hearing in court in the Bronx, I'm served with charges 5 days later by the superintendent. I'm sure he was told to serve those charges. Clearly, you can see that's retaliation. That was my argument, that it was retaliation for me testifying on this individual's behalf.
This investigator that you testified for in the Bronx, you said.
That's correct.
Okay. And as a result of, and just to kind of cut ahead on one thing,
Sure.
and you can come back to this if you want, but ultimately when this went to federal court and you had your day in court, what did the court determine? That's public record.
The court determined that it was clearly retaliation. Again, this was the Attorney General's office getting involved. What happened here was, again, getting nowhere on the state level with political interference, as we're all well aware of. My biggest argument was politics and police don't mix. Once we got into that forum in federal court, I felt relief. I felt like, hey, there's going to be some justification here. I'm taking the stand. Division's list with the Attorney General was over 27 people to come testify. That list dwindled down to about 9. My day in court, it changed because we went from 12 jurors to 8. And they wanted the decision, no matter what, it had to be unanimous. Meaning if I had one juror that held out or said, hey, no, you guys, you either lost it, stole it, or whatever happened to it. So it was a roll of the dice. The attorneys felt confident. I felt confident. Day one I got on that stand, I talked for 6 hours on that stand, and all I did was tell the truth from point A to point B. And I think the jurors saw through everything, all the smoking mirrors, all the people that came in to testify. I think they saw through the truth, and then that was it. So we got a favorable decision.
And if you don't mind me asking, and this is a personal question that I didn't put in our script that we kind of somewhat reviewed, tell the viewers about how this impacted your family, about how this affected your home life, your relationship with your spouse, and be candid about it. Tell us, I can't imagine what, right, wrong, or indifferent, whether you're innocent, guilty, and obviously you're innocent in the respect that they overwhelmingly decided in your favor. Tell us about that, how hard that was for you.
It was extremely difficult. It was dark times, and people say that I should have my head examined because I was still out to the day I was served with charges. I was still out there making an arrest. Matter of fact, the day before I was served with charges, me and some fellow troopers ended up rolling around at one of the service areas with somebody with a loaded handgun. And then the next day you're served with charges. So it's kind of blows your world apart. That day I came to Tarrytown the following day. I was brought into an office that was under construction where my captain gave me a letter from behind a desk. And I read this letter and I'm like, I go, what is this? She's like, this came down from the first deputy, the superintendent. And I said I wanted copies of it. They all looked at each other and they said, I don't know. We got to make a phone call. So they all left the office. And when I was alone in that office with that letter, I took a photo of that letter. It was a 3-page document signed by the superintendent. This would play an integral part later on in court.
This is what I wanted you to get into a few minutes ago. Yes.
Yeah. So I, advice of counsel, they said, sign the letter. We're going to deal with this head on. I said, okay. I signed the letter. I again asked for a copy. Field command instructed the captain at the time that no, he's not to be provided a copy of that letter. It'll be provided at a later date to his attorney. At that point, they brought me back to my locker. They asked me to open my locker. I gave them my division issued weapon. They then wanted my sidearm, which I was carrying at the time. I explained to them that they had no right to take my firearm because I'm a legal pistol permit holder. That threw a whole, confusion into the works there. They were like, wait, what? And I said, you're not taking my handgun. So I got into my car and I left Tarrytown for the last time. So driving home, I'm coming over that bridge and I just came home and I sat my wife down and I told her, and, it's heartbreaking. I'm like, it's going to be a long battle. I can see it. And, she's sick. She has MS. So what happened was she had flare-ups. She had to go to the doctor. We were doing medical treatment. I ended up selling my house for financial reasons because at that point, I'm like, I'm not going to be able to keep the nut on the house and do this and do. So I ended up selling the house, moved into a smaller house, uprooted the kids, moved my 3 boys, with us. So the impact was, it's hard to explain, but it's like a mushroom cloud that blows up in your head. You're either thinking you're dreaming this or how did this fucking happen? It can't happen to me. My only saving grace was, 4 hours later, I'm being offered jobs, be it Westchester County PD, the local PDs, the civil service law, because I'd come off a civil service list in the county. I was able to apply to a local job here in the county. One of those jobs was working in the village of South Nyack PD. The chief at the time was fantastic. I did the processing. It wasn't until the Sheriff Lou Falco, reached out to me and explained to me, hey, I'll give you the whole county.
Great guy, great. Just interject here too. Louis Falco is a great guy, and I just want to give a shout out to him as well because
absolutely, he's
tremendous.
I can't thank that man enough. With everything aside, he knew it. He saw through the bullshit. He did his homework on me. So at that point in time, I ended up not having a break in service. I did a resignation reinstatement and rolled over to the Rockland County Sheriff's Department. And in 2018, with my city time and everything up front, I took a 25-year out. So I retired with 25 years. And the same day I got sworn back in because I'm crazy and still wanted to do the job, even after all that was done to me. So here I am 29 years later. I'll give him one more year, I think, and then, look for other avenues.
Well, what some would call crazy, I would call committed. Whether you should be committed or not, I don't know, but
Well,
I think
yeah,
it's you're committed to preserving justice. You're committed to apprehending violent criminals and doing the right thing by agencies, not only the sheriff's office, but still you're providing services to the state police, ironically, for which I personally, with the open homicide cases we had there, you and I have talked many times, and you've talked to other
absolutely.
guys who still work down there, and you do the job of the people still to this day. To compliment you, you really do your part with Rockland Intel in developing great valued information still to the state police to assist them in their efforts, the men and women in apprehending violent criminals. So that you should be commended for that too. I just got to say that, you're still having
Thank
the
you.
state police, even though you kind of were given a bit of a rough ride there. So
Right.
kudos to you again. Jay, I interrupted you. I'm sorry.
No, you're fine. That was a good question, actually. I'm not sure why I'm complimenting you, but going back to your termination or your departure from the state police. Now, as a result of that, there was a lawsuit. You don't have to get into specifics, but just there was a lawsuit, and then there were some repercussions because of that. Not repercussions, but if you don't want to necessarily get into the specifics of it, could you at least address that at some capacity, that lawsuit portion of it?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you terminated, you're asked to leave a job in due course because of something that you're accused of. It wasn't like I was going to ride out to the sunset and say, oh, yeah, okay.
Right.
Unfortunately, some of our members, they've been wrongly accused, and they just, you take it and they leave. Granted, we have some bad apples, and every agency does. We're not going to get away from that. Are some going to fall through the cracks? Absolutely they are. I decided that, hey, this is wrong, and no matter what it takes, I'm going to fight it. And I started on the state level, and I was getting nowhere because of political interference. And when I say political interference, I can tell you now, we were picked up. I was picked up. I was asked to come over to Rye in Westchester County one day when I was working in my capacity at the Sheriff's Department. It was the FBI. A million things go through your mind. You're like, why would these people want to talk to me? It was the political corruption probe. These agents were not from the New York area. They were from out of state. They had answers to things that I won't go into right now, but they had answers to questions that I had how do you already know that? Like, there's no decision made. There isn't this, because they did their due diligence. They did their homework. After sitting down with them, I felt confident that, hey, you know what? I'm in the right. I'm in the right. I'm going to get my name cleared. In the end of this, it turned out, hey, they played dirty. If they could have just admit that they were wrong. Hey, listen, we were wrong. It wasn't until federal court that, hey, what can we give you if there was an offer on the table? Every day the judge asked, there's nothing on the table. Can we please get something on the table? No, they took it to 9 days of trial to hear lie after lie, or, you're a hero one day and a zero the next. I'm going to go back to my performance evaluations for low V&T. They came back to bite me. They were like, you're not a well-rounded trooper, because this is a negative on your performance evaluation. Okay. If that's all you got and you're throwing that at the wall to stick, then fine. The Attorney General's office, my personnel jacket, it was cleaned. The only things in there were negative, personnel complaints, troop car accidents, use of force, all negative. It wasn't until a certain sergeant, who was one of my sergeants, kept copies of everything and provided me with my legitimate case file from division. So in that sense, yeah, the upper echelon for the Division of State Police, I was angry. For the men and women of the State Police, I love them all. I'd work with them any day of the week. I work with them in my office. I work with SIU. I've sent you guys some photos. We're doing some real, interesting gang outlaw motorcycle stuff, and these guys are nothing but the best. I can't complain. Major case, no complaints. The good people, good eggs. It was the upper echelon, the superintendent. They just wanted a scapegoat, and they just picked the wrong guy. And I'm going to go back to like, you're a hero one day and a zero the next. One of my regrets, Carm asked me, what my regrets are. My regret was bringing so much attention to Tarrytown. These guys are still out there trying to do their job or do whatever work-wise, and here it is like, hey, multiple drug tests, multiple, inspections, evidence locker checks, you name it. They were coming in. They were coming at 2 a.m, 3 a.m. The day tour guys, the midnight crew. Everybody was on edge, and how bad that is for troopers or for any cop out there. How I kept my sanity was my family and my support staff. I still, to this day, am very tight with all the troopers that I worked with. William Sosky, Bill Pearsall, Ray Hassan, Jimmy Durkin. And these guys taught me the job. And, like I told you, I have no regrets. And if you ask me if I would do it all over again, my answer is going to be yes, in a heartbeat.
That's one of the things I'm so grateful for is, sorry, Carm, is before you even started this, one of my questions to you was this book written out of emotion? And you pretty much said that was a time like I was on an emotional roller coaster, and this was a way to get it out for me. And I think that comes out in the book. Good, bad, or indifferent. It's definitely understood that you were in a I don't want to say a dark place. You may say that, you may not, but it was in a place where you had a great distaste for the administration, if nothing else. And a lead into that is everybody has their own opinions, not only about the job as a whole, but then people and who we work with. I just want to, in your book, you reference a bunch of great guys that you worked with, and most of them I can attest to. There's a few that, whether you know it or not, I don't care for. And I won't say names because I think they're still working. I don't even know. But in the book, you reference one where you, I think it was during your 102-pound grab on the T-way there, and this trooper comes to back you up. And you note in there that there's a odor emanating of marijuana. You bring the driver out and interview them, and that trooper stays with the passenger. Now you're reintroduced the interview with the passenger, and you note that you saw a blanket was pulled over the evidence, the marijuana, and then your investigation reveals there's 102 pounds of marijuana. Well, there's a few things. First, that trooper you referenced obviously didn't do his job, because if he was, and maybe it was something that you left out, I don't know. But if he was doing his job, he should have seen that. Secondly, that same trooper, I don't know, you reference the whole, like, writing over certain discretionary options within troopers, what they have, writing tickets. I don't want to talk about, writing over PBA cards. I think that's something that you mentioned in your book, but just that discretion. This individual is known for that exactly. Not only, judges' wives and, other family members, and just to get that number. So
he's known for having zero discretion, I think, is kind of what you're
zero
getting
discretion.
at.
Yeah. And it's not to beat you up on who you call a great guy. It's more of to shed light on, we all have our opinions on who great guys are. And Carm and I have had this discussion a number of times. Almost everybody in his life seems to be a stand-up guy. And I'm not debating that, but we all have our interactions with people. And that one particular trooper, I can attest to. He's done a few shady things, to say the least. I just wanted to bring that up and circle it back around. Not sure what it means, but.
Well, I know exactly who you're referencing to. That particular night, my partner was away on vacation, so I ride with whoever I ride with. Being one of the senior members, you'll get a kick out of this because a lot of people didn't want to work with me for reasons of you know, the guy doesn't sleep. The guy's running plates till 5 a.m. Jesus Christ!
They don't want to get into anything, right? They don't want to get into anything.
Don't want to get tied up with an arrest. This guy's going to have somebody cuffed to the bench. I'm going to be babysitting him, blah, 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 blah. So this individual that night ended up in the passenger seat. I did a few car stops, tactical. Some of the points where you're better off just being like, listen, just stay in the car. If I signal with you with the flashlight, get out. This particular stop, it turned out to be 102 pounds. And, I know he took a lot of credit and he wanted the accolades of, hey, we grabbed 100, and I get it. But, it's all like who you work with. You hit a good point before. You just said, there's individuals on our job that are great guys, but it's like, once they put that uniform on, some of them are just, I'm like, where are you from? We're still people, let's do the job. Let's do it correctly. Outside of work, you're fine. You put this uniform on. I go, listen, I don't sit on bars. I don't sandbag DWIs. I hate Operation No Discretion. You're locking up people, writing over cards. One of my first stints in SP Haverstraw, Zone Sergeant came down and said, I got to talk to you. Without mentioning any names, this certain trooper said, I can't ride with this guy on midnights because he knows everybody in the county. He goes, every girl or every person we stopped that had a few drinks. I said, that's not the case. I said, you're sitting in a bar parking lot, we're watching cars. I go, that's not
right.
correct. It's not legal. I go, you're going to create case law. So, like you said, there are people, but what are we going to do? We have to ride with them. It's unfortunate, but it's part of the game.
Just to provide, again, I always like to provide context for viewers. Sitting on bars is a term that we're referring to right now, where there's been allegations and people in police work who sit right next to or right down the road from a bar and will wait for cars to pull out. And some people, me, one of them, I always considered that entrapment, and I never did that because I thought it was like the lowest thing to do, to sit right down the road from a bar and wait for somebody to pull out. The equal argument could be had, hey, you could stop the car and tell them don't drive, right? So that some people are known for doing that, and it's not just our job, it's other jobs as well, where they sit and wait for somebody to pull out for a bar to arrest them later for DWI. And it's something I've always been very much against as well, Seamus, and I 100% agree with you.
Same here, but Carm, who's to say that you came from a bar and you drank? Like, that, you said you can pull them over and tell that not everybody drinks at a bar. A lot of people go to bars, but they don't drink. It was and is a ploy by some police members, whether it be state police or local agencies, that they're going by the numbers, the pure numbers of it. If I sit at this bar, I know by chance I have a higher probability of getting somebody that's drunk because they're literally coming from there. So my work is half done for me. Now all I have to do is pull them over. I have the odor of alcohol. And now they just go through their SFSTs that way. And then they find a reason to pull them over. So that's what he was referring to, sitting on the bar. And that's my point I wanted to make, is just like, you could be coming from a bar, but you don't have to be drinking.
Right. I just think it's shitty. It's shitty. It's shitty.
It's shitty. I don't think you could even, I hated that. I never did that. And that's probably one of the reasons why I wasn't a big DWI guy, but like, absolutely, for sure.
Same here. Carm, you're right too. Listen, and again, we're saying, listen, we have to get drunks and intoxicated drivers off the road, but you have to also do it legally.
Right.
And,
absolutely.
I was never a bar sitter myself, like Jay, but it's unfortunate. So it's disturbing in a way, but you work with people that we don't get along with. We used to refer to, like Terrytown, you had the A team and the B team. The B team would be doing the arraignment in the morning. They come in, they peek their head around the corner, and you see 4 or 5 people cuffed to the bench. It's like, I'm stuck with your bag of shit now. Getting them arraigned, getting sick, getting dope sick.
We've all been there. We've all been the person coming in the next morning, and you're like, oh shit.
Yeah. So it's
a necessary evil, and it's essential that it still happens. So
it's true. but and again, going back to bringing all this unwanted attention on the barracks and in Tarrytown and the members, it sucked. And for 2 years while this investigation was going on, I worked with some troopers who we did good. We did really good work. Jay asked me about some of the highlights of my career and some things that just floating through my head. It's like, the Gordon Diggle arrest for a homicide. It was amazing. It was amazing. We're in the barracks. Headquarters put out a bolo, and I looked over at my partner Sasky, and I said, let's go set up. We looked at the map, and I go, the only way for them to get up, they got to come over the bridge or go down 287 and come back over to George Washington, the Parkway. And as I pulled my car out, I was just getting onto the bridge, and the MDT, our mobile data computers were warming up, and I just happened to look up, and sure enough, I saw the car, and it was clockwork. Turned out to be a great arrest. Got him.
Seamus, two things. If you can, so a bolo, for anybody that doesn't know, is be on the lookout. So they put out a bolo for a specific car. What was that car wanted for?
Yes. Yeah, so bolo be on the lookout was a gentleman who had just committed within the last 48 hours a homicide in the state of Ohio, Wapakoneta, Ohio. He actually followed a gentleman out of a bar and stomped him to death, his head. Guy died 2 days. He actually died that night, but he fled in a vehicle. They got a good description on the car. I picked it up going over the bridge, and we've all been there. You know that feeling. I picked up the mic for a second, and I'm not going to lie. My hand was shaking. It was an adrenaline dump. I'm by myself, and I just got close to the car. I must have looked at that plate a dozen times. I put it over the air. They confirmed it, held all radio traffic, the whole 9 yards, and we ended up getting them stopped. But turned out to be a really good case. Ended up going to Ohio to testify. One of the highlights of my career.
So if I can interject here quick too, and that right there is the nature of what being a police officer is about. You apprehended a wanted murderer from Ohio. It doesn't get, for the folks who are viewing this, it doesn't get any better than that. You actually captured a murderer who was wanted for stomping somebody to death.
How about it? Well, I will say this: it doesn't get much more rewarding than that.
Yeah,
that sense of fulfillment. There's other areas where you can get your fulfillment, but that is probably one of the most gratifying feelings that you can get for sure.
Just for clarification, asshole, that's my opinion of what it would be. So you can say what you want to say. I just gave my opinion that his stop, he apprehended a murderer, and you could just suck a bag right now, okay? So number one, I wanted to make that point, and number two, Seamus, I want to get your input on this new law. I just wrote this down in my notes. When you see me looking down, it's me looking at the script and writing additional things. This new proposal by a certain legislator in the state to outlaw routine traffic stops and the impact on what that would mean. And I always give the example, I've been given this example recently, routine traffic stops, stopping somebody for a plate lamp, stopping somebody for speeding, no seatbelt, led to the apprehension of Joel Rifkin, serial killer in Long Island, and led to the apprehension of the Alfred E. Murrow bombing. What was his name? Timothy McVeigh. There's a proposal in the state legislature right now to outlaw those routine traffic stops, and I want your commentary on that since this was your bread and butter for years.
Well, let's all hope and pray that common sense, comes into play here, and they see through this and say, hey, no. But as we're all well aware of, policing right now is at an all-time low. Our hands are tied. Instead of helping a cop or a trooper on the side of the road, what are they doing? They're grabbing their cell phones and videotaping it, instead of reaching out to lend a hand to help. That bill, if passed, it'll cripple us. It's already got an effect on individuals. I still stop. I see a trooper with a car stop. I'm still stopping, helping them, backing them up. It's hard to blame these guys and girls out there that are like, fuck it, I'm not going to do anything. I don't want to lose my job. I don't want to lose my career. But we all took an oath, and that was one of my biggest things was like, how do you sleep at night? Not doing your job, working with people that would, sleep the 2 shift away and then work a B job during the day. I'm like, where is your dignity? Where, we took an oath to do this job, do it, do it right. That law will cripple us. As you know, I'm against it. And I pray to God that it doesn't even make the board or come across the desk.
Let's pray. Let's pray that to add to bail reform, add to raise the age, to add to the discovery, and how that's crippled prosecutions. These extremely progressive law effectuations have really crippled police work and conviction rates, as former Superintendent Negrelli spoke during our last podcast. And it's empirical data now, folks. It's a matter of interpreting that empirical data to show what that crippling effects of these things are, and you're speaking to that directly. So we very much appreciate that.
Yeah. Negrelli hit on some really good key points too. He was pretty informative. I want to refer back to the Gordon Diggle incident again to show how division. Obviously, it was a big arrest. It turned out to be a very, very good arrest. Locally, we were awarded some really prestigious awards here, but not for myself, because I was never really in it for the accolades or the awards. I just love doing this job. That the state police denied troopers commendation only because it was a bolo. I think that this was also in effect because the whole IEB investigation was going on. So when it went to Albany, there was an asterisk next to our names. And, for the other trooper that was involved or the guys that were with me, I'm like, they got punished. They should have been awarded. It was a noteworthy arrest, where we even had to drive to Ohio, like I said, and testify for 3 days. It made headline news over there. It was an insanity. But again, it shows you how the upper echelon targeted and was just like, absolutely not. It was a bolo. You show me how many people or how many troopers would be on that bolo, or how many other cars did it drive past before we stopped it.
Yep.
But
Absolutely.
Par for the course, right? Play the game. So
talk about for a second, if you don't mind, this isn't in the script, but I just want to touch on it. How many, not to sound insensitive in saying this, but in police work, we refer to it as jumpers. How many jumpers have you handled when it was the Tappan Zee Bridge?
When I was on the TAP, I could only remember clearly 6. One of the worst ones I had was when you guys probably remember we did road construction on that bridge for probably 2 or 3 years, where we would actually bring it down to one lane on each side, both north and south, east and west. Where we'd physically have to stop traffic. And while stopping traffic, you're stopped for at least 25 to 30 minutes each time for them to move barriers, to move girders. One of these, I was on the northbound side just before the main span, mile marker 14. And on the southbound side, I looked over and there was a truck driver hitting his horn once traffic was released. And I glanced over and I looked, and I thought maybe that this individual was sleeping. I shined my spotlight from my northbound lanes into the southbound, right into the car, and I could see him. He was fiddling around. He calmly got out of the car, and he just looked up. He looked over at me, then he looked at the truck driver, and he just did a complete Superman off the main span. And to physically see that, it goes through your mind that you're like, did I just see that? And you get over there, and it's sad. But that bridge was it caught a lot of people. Between there and the Inglewood Cliffs or the George Washington, those 3 locations were always for bridge jumpers.
Same thing with the Kingston Rhinecliff Bridge.
Correct.
Up here. Both responded to many of them as well. But I was always curious about down there how many you folks dealt with.
Yeah.
Crazy.
One last thing, at least from my perspective, I just wanted to bring together. In your book, you mentioned slugs quite a bit, and there's different ways that we can determine what a slug would be. A police slang, basically, a slug is for a guy that really doesn't want to do work, or a girl that doesn't want to do work. They like just sitting back, kicking back, and collecting a paycheck, if nothing else. I personally think, because this was such an emotionally driven book, that I think the communication part might have been slacking, but the interpretation that some people got from it was that if you went to a special detail that wasn't enforcement driven, then you think that they were a slug. I don't think that's always the case, and I don't think that you do. So I just wanted to clarify that, because I was part of the commercial vehicle enforcement for 8 years, and although that wasn't my bread and butter, and I didn't, that wasn't my favorite thing to do. You had both sides of the spectrum, even within the commercial vehicle enforcement. You had guys that were smarter than anybody I've ever met, and then you also had guys that just rode and did absolutely nothing. I felt I was kind of in the middle. But even there's how many different details can we go through that would be in that same realm? There's countless. It's a state police. It's a big agency. So I just wanted to bring that together. Like, just because you go to one particular detail or spot within the state police doesn't necessarily make you that quintessential slug. My opinion.
No. And when I refer to the certain individuals, it's more of, let's say, based on merit. Should you be promoted based on merit? I think that every trooper should do at least 5 years on the road. Mandatory 5 years on the road. I don't care what your educational background is. You should be in a complaint station. You should at least have 10 felony arrests that you've done yourself, and not a bullshit scratch number that you got from hey, take a scratch on a felony for what we did, because you did nothing.
I have to
comment
on that too.
That's actually good. I want to talk about that too, is a scratch. How people get promoted based on shit that they didn't even fucking do. So a lot of times what happens, Carm, you can interject here at any point in time, but there'll be a big arrest where BCI arrests somebody for prescription fraud or something like that, where there's hundreds of counts of a particular charge, and you have 2 troopers that are helping out. At what capacity they're helping out? Maybe they're just fingerprinting. Maybe they're just putting the computer SJS entry. And Carmine or somebody within BCI can assign those arrests to a trooper to give them credit for something that they did absolutely fucking nothing on. So that's basically what I think you're talking about, Seamus, is somebody like that who gets credit for an arrest that they might not even have had anything to do with. Sorry, Carm, go ahead.
No, to provide some explanation for that, assigning arrests from the bureau level. So back when I was in the bureau, you would send teletypes, and the people would get credit. You'd send a teletype to Albany, giving credit to somebody's shield number so that they could get credit for the number of arrests that the Bureau of Criminal Investigation would investigate. Say they had a murder and criminal possession of a weapon, and the trooper wasn't involved in the initial part of it, the Bureau could give them credit for that scratch, if you will, by assigning that shield number, sending a teletype for that arrest to give them that credit. Nowadays, with the advent of SJS, and now they use another system that's very different from SJS. It's harder for that process to happen, but they still can assign somewhat credit to it. But the slugs of the station were the people, and we knew them in the Bureau too, they're the people who came back to hang out by the Bureau, who weren't on the road. That would be, hey, do you have any scratches, or do you have any arrests that we could get credit for to increase the Bureau numbers? It doesn't happen as much as when we used to send teletypes, which you guys remember all too well, the file 20s and the file 13s, et cetera. But now it's harder for that to happen. But it still does happen at a lower level. Boring little aside, but just to provide everybody an explanation of that process.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Jay. You're going to say something wise.
I'm done. No, you actually brought it together fairly decently. And there's no way to not be bored about that. Yes, you should be happy.
I'm happy that I was able to make it succinct enough for you.
I knew you were going to say that.
I really
knew you were going to fucking say that.
I'm happy that you're happy. How's that? It's just like working with you.
Yes, exactly. Seamus, thank you so much. Is there any last things that you want to say or point out or bring back up before we close it down?
No, I just want, I want everybody to know, the viewers and the people here, again, don't think, I still love the state police. It was one of the best organizations I worked for. Carm asked me if I would ever do it all over again. Yeah. Would I change a few things? Maybe, but God put me through this. I got through it. People are always like, oh, you got rewarded. But you don't know what we went through to get rewarded. So with that sense, again, I'm gonna reflect back to, like, I've worked with some of the best people in Division of State Police, and I still do, and I'm grateful and I'm thankful for that, and I'm still working with them. And I just appreciate you guys giving me the time to come on here. The book was written, for therapy for me. I think it gets the point across that you could see it can happen to you. I think that it should be mandatory reading because you're a hero one day and a zero the next. It not only affected me, my family, but it also affected how interdiction was done. It stopped. For a short period of time, it stopped out there because I'm still getting the teletypes, reading the arrest, the snare messages, and I'd be like, what are these people doing? Nobody wanted to do it. It completely shut down. The numbers dropped. So I just want to say that, thanks again. I appreciate all you guys have done. I appreciate the work that state police do, and no ill or hard feelings towards anybody.
Quick question for you after
Sure.
that, and we thank you for that. A year comes and goes, and you are going to be potentially retiring from the Rockland County Sheriff's Office. What's your plan after that? What do you want to do?
Well, wife, she's a school teacher. She's going to have another year. I definitely won't be in New York. You won't find me in New York. I will definitely be somewhere south where it's warm. I was awarded, after all and said and done with the Division of State Police, I got to put my 3 boys through college. I got a house that's paid off. I had some extra money. So, I definitely won't be in New York, Carm.
Good for you, brother. I'm happy that you have a succession plan and that your most importantly, that your family is okay, your wife and your boys. And we always give credit to families here because the families are the most important part of the recipe in supporting what we deal with, whether it be the trauma years afterward or the trauma in the immediacy of what you're dealing with. So we do want to say thank you. Jay, I'm going to hand it over to you to do the closeout, the Lake Share stuff. And Seamus, thank you for coming on. We appreciate it.
No, thank you.
And Seamus, one last thing. When I end this, could you just please stay on? I want to talk to you for a second afterwards.
Absolutely.
Yes. So with that being said, thank you so much for being on. I appreciate it. It was an honor to talk to you. Your story is indeed exactly what you said. Extremely important. Everybody needs to know the good, bad, and indifferent and what you could potentially see yourself against when you're working in certain agencies. So again, thank you. And then for everybody else out there, please, we're picking up some steam here with some really intriguing guests, as you just heard. So please share, like, comment, and do all that good shit.
Hold up
Subscribe.
his book quick. Hold up his book so the viewers can see
One last time, yes.
Yeah.
That's it.
Thruway
We're going.
yours truly.
Look at that young
that's the Tappan Zee Bridge in 1T19.
Love it.
So we'll also put a link in our YouTube description on that one as well. So thank you once again. We appreciate it, guys.
Thank you.